Welcome to another episode of OTA on the Air, our Team 88 edition. So our quarterly update about what's going on in the legislative process. With me today is Andrew Huffman with Governmental Policy Group to kind of help me walk through the slides and talk a little bit about what's going on with the legislature. So welcome, Andrew.
Thank you, Tom.
So the first area we wanted to really kind of hit on was business development and talk about some of the wins and the priorities that we have moving forward in the area of business development. So the first big win that we got was the permanent trailer plates, which would allow for a permanent trailer plate to be issued here in Ohio. The registrar's office has until the end of the year. So Andrew, correct me if I'm wrong, but the first plates will be available for issue in January. Is that correct?
I believe that's the case. And I know the Department of Public Safety is working on this. You know, they got to kind of figure out this process as well. The bill took effect in July, but it does take a while for this to kick in. So I think you're spot on. It's January.
And the key points to this particular piece of legislation is it's really a de facto pilot program, if you will, because it's only available to new trailers to Ohio. So not necessarily new to the member or the Ohio company if that they're bringing that trailer back into the state. But if it has to be a new registration in Ohio. Is that correct?
That is correct. And I also think it's important to point out that for this to work, you need to kind of shop around where you register your trailer and what locality you do it. Ohio, the reason this was so difficult to get done is Ohio has so many layers of fees. And one of those layers is a local fee that the county can charge, township can charge, and a municipality can charge. So those fees can rack up to a total of $30 of permissive fees. And if you get in the right location, it could be zero. If you register in the wrong location, it could be $30 additional dollars. So it really does matter where you register your trailers. And
that is a great point, Andrew. So you really wanted to kind of emphasize that for the listeners is depending on the county in Ohio that you register these trailers are in, that will be determining where and what fees apply. So you have to find counties that have zero permissive taxes in them, as well as the location of that. So we are, as an association right now, in the process of cataloging where those locations are and those assistant registrars' offices, where they are to be able to do this so that the members know, hey, you know, you may not have one in your particular county, but you're going to have to go 3 counties over or whatever the scenario may be to be able to register that trailer in that county. To make sure that you're getting the least possible price that you can find. Anything else on permanent trailer plates? It's been a big win, something that's been on the list for OTA for decades, I believe. So, so very big, very good win. Anything else on that, Andrew?
I don't think so. It'll be interesting to see how the department moves forward with this program. And then keep in mind, we're going to have to fight for this again about a year and a half from now in the next transportation budget. You know, we need to continue to push this and hopefully your members will utilize it and we can come in next session and say, hey, look how many more trailers we have.
Right. And then the next piece that we've got is just some kind of other wins that we've had over the years that I'll kind of run through a little quickly and hit on some a little bit more specifically. One of which is the sales tax on fuel. And this is specifically for fuel that's being used in refrigerated trailers, refrigerated units. Previously, you could go back and get the on-road diesel fuel tax that is paid for, that can be used for that you get a refund of that money paid on those taxes, but then the state would charge you sales tax on fuel. So we actually got that switched in which now sales tax is you're exempt from sales tax on that. So that was a big win, something that obviously the refrigerated haulers had asked for years, brought us consistent with other states. The other one is independent contractor status, which is something that we have fought for. So Ohio has a very specific set of laws in relation to independent contractor status. And one thing that we have on available, and it's part of our processes, is the training behind that. You need to be very specific in how you classify independent contractor status. And obviously with AB5 and the battles we're having in California, it's extremely important to make sure you're set up properly to be able to operate with independent contractors. Protecting ourselves from harmful contracts. This is the anti-indemnification language that's in there. Better towing laws, streamline the heavy haul permit, fixed unemployment insurance, and then made Ohio's trucking registration fair. We used to actually penalize Ohio carriers for registering their trucks in Ohio, and that was based off of the permissive taxes in the counties, which we made a change to make sure that that was there. Another big win that we had this past session was the introduction of an 8-year license, driver's license in Ohio, renewal for up to 8 years. And there was a play to get rid of that, but that is now in place and started in July. So Andrew, you kind of want to talk through that process as well?
Yeah, that was a big one. You know, we were approached with that from a legislator, Derek Marin, from the Toledo area, and he did it. It applies to all licenses, not just CDLs, but we viewed it as a way to kind of, you know, help drivers avoid that line, avoid that delay in renewing their license. And we've had to fight it. You know, we were able to pass it last session, and then they tried to repeal it early this session. So we were able to push back against those efforts to repeal it. So that worked out well, and I hope people take advantage of it.
So I guess some of the priorities that we have going forward, and that's one thing that I always talk about in my state of the associations, is making sure that you know that not only are we talking about the things that we've won, but how do we continue to work and move ourselves forward. And I think one of the big things that we've really kind of talked about is protection from predatory towing. And this is one thing, Andrew, that I'll let you give us a little bit of history on. This is not a new topic to us. This is not something that we are amateurs at, but it has been a long and very challenging process.
Yeah, Tom, you're spot on. You know, for the last, almost a decade, we've been pushing back on towing issues, or pushing for towing reforms, and there's been some things done. We've been able to allow trucking companies to arrange for their own tows if they break down on Ohio's roadways. We've been able to improve some of the protections when towing companies do damage to equipment. And, you know, there still needs to be additional steps. We understand that there's still some bad actors out there. You know, you don't write the laws for the good guys, the good towing companies out there. You write the laws for the bad ones. And we understand it's still an issue. We need to work with the insurance industry, and then also the towing associations out there, those who are doing it the right way. And Tom, I know you've had those discussions. So I think we can get something done. It's just a balancing act. You know, how can we protect trucking companies while also not being overly burdensome on towing companies?
You know, and Andrew, there was a bill a few years ago that tried to establish a review board, if you will,
yeah,
for passenger vehicles that excluded commercial vehicles. Did that review board ever get put in place? And is that an option for us out there to take a look at when it comes to these $80,000 to $100,000 tow bills?
Yeah, if I remember right, it was the Towing Board Advisory Council, something like that. And it would allow essentially individuals to essentially file claims objecting to some of those charges. And I think that is the next step, Tom, is creating a board or a panel like that. Where is it housed? I think that's the $1 million question. You know, is it in the PUCO or some other state agency? And then who sits on the panel as well? That'll be important, so everybody gets gets a fair say. You know, the towing industry will want representatives on there, the insurance industry, consumers, and then certainly us as well. So that'll be a big one.
You know, and I guess you know, that's a good question. You know, until, for the listener's sake, until what, 2 years ago when that bill went through, towing was unregulated. There was no regulatory agency that had oversight for them. And now with the addition of that bill, that the towing industry now has a regulatory body and some rules to play by.
Yep.
The next thing is fuel tax parity. That's one thing that we've talked a lot about. At the last highway bill, not this most recent one, but the one that would have been 2.5 years ago, Ohio put in a differential in between diesel and unleaded gasoline, and so that tax differential is there. First time that Ohio has done that. It's not abnormal. Other states do that, but not with a lot of frequency. And one thing that we have said and made very clear to the legislature is in that process that when they look at enhancing revenue for highways, roads and highways, that we as an industry are not interested in having a conversation about increasing diesel tax or increasing or indexing the fuel fee until such time that gasoline tax increases to the level of what diesel tax is. And Andrew, you want to give folks a little bit of a history on that?
Yeah, Tom, like you said, it was 2 transportation budgets ago. Every year, or every 2 years, I should say, there's a debate. How do we fund our roads? And there's only so much money to go around. As cars and vehicles become more fuel efficient, revenues go down. And so it's the multi-billion-dollar question. How do we fund our roads? So while we did increase the fuel tax last session, or 2 sessions ago, last session, there really wasn't a discussion this session. We were able to fill that hole, if you will, for the time being, but the issue is not going away. This is something that will be discussed every 2 years, every transportation budget. And there's been attempts to look at some alternative funding sources, not to scare anyone, but the vehicle mile traveled tax, that's been something that's been discussed. I don't know if that's really feasible at this point. Tolls, things like that. It just costs quite a bit of money to administer the type of funding sources. So right now, the most efficient way to fund our roads is a fuel tax. And we just need to make sure that if they do increase it in the future, it's done fairly across the board.
Well, and the interesting part is that, we have this debate on the federal level as well, is how to pay for roads and diversion of those funds. And I think it's important for our Team 88 members to understand that Ohio has a constitutional amendment that requires that the fees that are collected for road use goes back into the roads. So these are monies that are not being diverted to transit, that are not being diverted off into beautification projects and things like that. So just so you're aware that, when we increase the fuel tax in Ohio, that money goes back onto the roads. And the other piece is that none of that fuel tax dollars goes to the Department of Public Safety for enforcement procedures. That all comes from registration fees. So there's this weird line in the sand, if you will, between DOT and the Department of Public Safety. DPS gets money from registrations. ODOT gets their money from fuel tax. So what our argument has always been, especially when it comes to fuel tax, because I think it's like a 7-to-1 ratio, that for every penny you increase the fuel tax on the gasoline side, you get 7 times the number of monies that you do from increasing on the diesel side. That's where the money's at. So that's where you need to go, because those are the folks who are actually driving the miles on the roads. And we make up just a small percentage of that. One of our next priorities is the interesting piece, and Andrew, I'll let you explain this one, is the sales tax exemption for forklifts.
Yeah, this is an interesting one. So Ohio currently exempts from sales tax forklifts that are used for manufacturing. However, such a sales tax exemption does not apply to those in the logistics industry. So we give manufacturers the sales tax exemption, but not trucking companies. And interestingly enough, Indiana does grant the sales tax exemption to those in the logistics industry. So what we're seeing is a number of Ohio-based companies going over to Indiana to purchase their forklifts, and that's just bad for business here in Ohio. We want forklift manufacturers and sales businesses to be here in Ohio, and those purchases to take place here in Ohio. So Senator Narash Antani from the Dayton area, he has introduced a bill for the last 2 General Assemblies now that would extend this sales tax exemption to those in the logistics industry. That one's pending in the Senate Ways and Means Committee. Like any sales tax exemption, this comes with a price tag, and it's a pretty big one. And they just need to work through that process. But right now, we have Ohio companies going over to Indiana to purchase their forklifts.
Yeah. Indiana, West Virginia is the same way. They have an exemption from it. So have they done a financial impact? What's the financial analysis on what that impact will be?
Tom, I should have known you were going to ask me that. I do not have it in front of me, but I know it's in the millions of dollars.
Right. I'd imagine it's a pretty large, because you're talking about, 7%, 7.5% sales tax on equipment that's not inexpensive. So,
well, and what they've been doing, Tom, and we've run into this on a bill that we'll talk about here in the near future, but they're putting what's called a sunset provision on these sales tax exemptions, and really any tax exemption. And it makes some sense. People come to the legislature saying, we need a sales tax exemption, we need an income tax credit, something like that, to generate jobs or to bring business to the state. And there's really no proof if it works or not. So often you get these exemptions and they just stay forever, and we don't know if they work or not. So what the legislature has been doing, they've been putting a 4-year sunset on these bills, saying, okay, you have 4 years to figure this out. If it works, great, we'll renew it. If it doesn't, that tax credit, that sales tax exemption, it's going to go away. So I think it's pretty smart on the legislature's part.
Great. So the next topic area is workforce development. And I'm going to add another one onto the wins, which I just thought of as we were working through this process. And I'm developing a presentation for another group of waste haulers on Monday. But one of the big wins on the most recent piece is a grants and loan program for CDL schools. I know, Andrew, you were intimately involved in this process from start to finish. So you want to walk the listeners through that one.
Yeah, and then when Tom says start to finish, this has been a 6-year process, I believe. So actually, everything on this slide has been a 6-year process. We've been working on this. We've made trying to attract drivers to the industry, trying to train drivers. It's really been our priority for over half a decade. And the grant and loan, we'll call it a scholarship program. We found that there really isn't a scholarship program for an individual who wants to go to CDL school. And that's a problem for a number of reasons. One, you can almost guarantee that someone leaving school with a CDL, they're going to get paid pretty well coming out of school. And so it's not like a 4-year institution where there's no guarantee that you're going to get a job after you graduate. So and there's a problem with folks looking to switch careers. If you're working at in the fast food industry and you want to go and get your CDL, not only do you have to pay for the CDL school, but you can't work during that time either. So you don't have income coming in. So there needed to be that funding source. And we had quite a bit of support from within the legislature. I think if anything good came from COVID, it really highlighted the industry and the work that you all do and the need for drivers. And, if there's not drivers, goods don't move. And so it really kind of helped our argument. And so what we were able to do, we were able to create the Commercial Truck Driver Student Aid Program. It's a $5 million per year program. And actually, that was the bill that we introduced initially. We were able to get that done in the state operating budget. And unfortunately, they took the $5 million per year and cut that down to $2.5 million. But, after 6 years of working on this, we'll take $2.5 million per year. And what that will do, it provides applicants to a CDL school. Half of it will be in the form of a grant, and the other half would be in the form of a loan. And we've made this argument in the past. We needed this program now more than ever before. A few years ago, they raided a fund. It was the Ohio Means Jobs Workforce Revolving Loan Fund. So it did provide loans to those individuals going to a CDL school, not a grant, it was a loan. And then they eliminated that program and to fund something else, unfortunately. So we really needed this. And then, like I said, we were able to get this done in the main operating budget this year. That was signed on June 30th. and we're working with the Department of Higher Ed on how to best implement this program. So some work still needs to be done, but 6 years in the making. Very happy to see this scholarship program go into effect.
Well, yeah, and the importance of it is extremely timely, or the timing of it is extremely important because with the FMCSA's requirement for the entry-level driver training program, that going to CDL school is really the most organized and easiest way to get a CDL in that process. So, unless the company has a driver training program there that they can put new hires through, going to CDL school is really the only other option that people have. It's not. When I got my CDL, I was self-trained. I went in the backyard and hooked up a truck and trailer and backed around the yard for hours on end to teach myself. That's not an option anymore. So that being able to have this availability of funds to be able to go to truck driving schools is vitally important. So the process of that is it went to the Department of Higher Education, and when do they have a deadline or a release date of when these funds are going to be available?
Well, they could be available as soon as the Department of Higher Ed promulgates rules establishing the program. And that's when I said some work still needs to be done. Yes, those funds are available, but the Department of Higher Ed hasn't established the program. So as you can imagine, anytime you're starting a new program, it takes some time and you have to go through the steps. And we're doing that right now. In fact, we also need to make some tweaks in some legislation. So we're tweaking the program. So it won't be finalized for a while, but we do have funding for the next 2 years for this program, which is great.
So some of the other priorities we're working on from a workforce development standpoint is what's the tax credit for driver training. And what that is that's a 50% matching program up to $25,000. So a total of $50,000 invested will get you $25,000 in a tax credit on your individual tax returns. So it would have to be run through a sole proprietorship, a partnership, or an LLC. It's not available for corporations or through your corporate or the CAT. It's not available to go against that, but it would be on an individual basis to do and provide driver training, onboarding training, ongoing training, trainings after accidents, whatever the training source may be. That is a source of funding that will be available to us. So, Andrew, you want to give an update on where that is at as well?
Yeah, we were very lucky. We, again, like the scholarship program, we have quite a bit of support for this. And this is another bill. It's been around for about 6 years. And so it's nothing new. Last session, we were able to get it through the House. The vote, we only had one no vote, but unfortunately it stalled in the Senate. And then especially when COVID hit, no one really knew what the financial footing of the state was going to be. So they were hesitant to pass a tax credit. However, we're seeing similar support this go around as well. This bill was reported from the House Ways and Means Committee with unanimous support. This is something that both Democrats and Republicans can get behind. We were able to make some improvements from last year, and we are just waiting on a floor vote. And I imagine when we do have a floor vote, it may be a similar vote. In fact, I think we could probably get unanimous support on the House floor. So hopefully we can get this through the House and hit the ground running in the Senate.
Yeah, and I have talked to the one no vote, both Andrew and I have, and it is a member who has a very close ties to OOIDA, and we've had subsequent conversations with OOIDA, and they understand what we're trying to do here. I think a little better is not the issue of driver shortage. It's not about that argument. It's about how do we make sure that our drivers at all levels receive the training they need to make sure that they're successful in the industry. And that's the whole point behind this, is to making sure that we have tax credits available to individuals, not large corporations, and that help them further their driver training and make their drivers as best they possibly can.
And Tom, I got to add, I laughed when you said we spoke to the one no vote. He was a co-sponsor of the bill.
Right.
So it wasn't until his buddy from the district reached out to him and I think kind of yelled at him a little bit that he changed his vote, but he was a co-sponsor on the bill.
Yeah. The other piece is that we have insurance coverage for younger drivers is another piece that we're taking a look at very carefully. We had a bill out there, which was just a study And I think the issue is ensuring drivers under the age of 25. And we're not looking to mandate anything on the insurance industry or change their underwriting protocols. I think the issue is we want them to come to the table and see, is there ways that we can provide coverage for drivers under the age of 25, and making sure that that coverage is available to them. For a lot of the companies who can't afford insurance, we know insurance is a big issue. So, we kind of thought that issue was dead, but I think we have kind of found a champion who's willing to go to the table on that one for us.
Yeah, Tom, if I can add to that, this just shows how working on other issues can get you champions. And one of the sponsors from the scholarship program and one of the sponsors from the tax credit program, they got together and said, we need to do more. And this is where that insurance coverage study comes into play. And they are going to team up on that issue and introduce a bill. Really, they're just waiting for us to give them the green light. And the question is, how do we engage the insurance industry? Last go around when we tried this, they really pushed back. And despite just being a study, no mandates. So we need to kind of handle this issue delicately because we want to be a partner with them. We don't want to force their hand into anything. We want this to be a collaborative approach to solving this problem.
Great. So then the last area we wanted to talk a little bit about is wins on the safety side. And obviously that's something that's extremely important to our industry. And some of the big wins that we've had is one of which is about lane restrictions. And this is a bill that has been gone for quite a while. And some of the biggest wins that we have as an association are things that you never see or never hear about, is the issue of lane restrictions. And there was a bill that would have required, the way it was written, was that trucks would have to stay in the right 2 lanes regardless of how many lanes. So even if you're going through downtown Cleveland, Columbus, Cincinnati, and you got 5 lanes at your disposal, the trucks would have been mandated to stay in the right 2 lanes under all circumstances. So that bill we just successfully disposed of that bill. That particular sponsor is no longer in the legislature, but it's obviously something that we chalk up as a win and look for. The next issue is the issue of truck parking. We've made some very good headway. In fact, when there was the differential put into place between gas and diesel, we did have a request in to commit money to truck parking. And that's one thing that we've continually talked about. The department is well aware of. I sit on a committee that is looking into the truck parking issue right now with ODOT. But as I've always said, this is an asphalt problem. We just don't have enough lanes on the ground to be able to have enough truck parking. So something that we're obviously looking for, we're working towards as well, and something that we're going to continue to work for, to be able to find more truck parking, to find the funding committed to truck parking, to be able to alleviate that issue. Well, one of our biggest priorities of this session has been distracted driving as a primary offense. Ohio is only one of 4 states that does not have distracted driving as a primary offense. And we know full well the impacts that has on our industry, whether it comes from lawsuits, accident frequencies, and those pieces. So Andrew, why don't you talk a little bit about where distracted driving is at and some of the challenges that we have in front of us?
Yeah, this is, again, a bill that's been around for a while and a bill that we've supported for multiple GAs now. The governor, Governor DeWine, is 100% behind this effort. In fact, he included it in his transportation budget. Lawmakers removed that provision from the bill, which we were upset to see, but we were able to get it introduced as a standalone bill. And what this does, it essentially just makes use of a handheld device a primary offense as opposed to a secondary offense. Like Tom said, this is something that's not unheard of. Most every other state in the union has a primary offense. We're one of the few. And so we were able to get 2 great sponsors, Representative Cindy Abrams from Harrison, Ohio, and then Brian Lampton, Republican from Fairborn. And they, as you can imagine, this brings in a number of groups. And we actually joined a coalition called the For Ohio Coalition. And it includes the insurance industry, hospitals, the business community, local governments, and they're all kind of rowing in the same direction, trying to get this done. The challenge that we're running into is some pushback from some members who believe that this could lead to abuses from the law enforcement community. It gives another reason for law enforcement to pull over individuals, which can lead to all sorts of issues. So it's balancing those concerns while also balancing the concerns of law enforcement and like I said, the dozens of other groups that are involved. And you know, the Trucking Association, it's kind of nice being on our side because we don't care how this issue gets done. We just want primary offense, because when we talk about saving lives, there is nothing the legislature can do that would save more lives than passing this bill. And the numbers are there. If you do this, you will save lives. And it's amazing. Again, using COVID as an example, traffic, the actual amount of traffic decreased significantly, yet the deaths on Ohio roadways increased by 17%. So the data is there showing that we need to pass this. We just need to work through all these various groups, which is proving to be challenging. But I think we have the votes to get this through the committee. It's in the House Criminal Justice Committee right now. I think we'll get it through the committee. And I think we also have the votes in the Ohio House to get this done. It runs into another challenge over in the Senate. The Senate President, Matt Huffman, he has raised concerns about this. And for the reasons I said, it could lead to abuses within law enforcement. So that will be a hurdle that we need to get over in the Senate, but one step at a time. Let's get this through the committee process and then get it through the House. And that's all we can do, one step at a time. We have the support.
Yeah, and one of the things that we talk about from our particular issue is that we would never allow someone to text and walk through a manufacturing floor. You know, that's just a safety. In a safe workplace, the employer is required to provide a safe workplace for their employees. And the unfortunate part is we transact our business among the motoring public, and we have a responsibility to provide a safe environment for our employees to transact their business. But those laws are made by the legislature. So we'll continue to work on this one as hard as we can, and be able to see that work its way through. You know, it's interesting how many different sides of this issue, you know, get peeled back when you start really getting into it. And I think it's interesting that I think everybody believes this is a good idea. I don't think there's anybody out there from a legislative perspective that can say they're not in favor of keeping our roads safe, and that distracted driving isn't an issue. It is just got a lot of folks who come from very differing backgrounds and very differing degrees of concern, see this as a winner, but they want to get their stuff hooked onto it as well. So it becomes extremely challenging, and in our case, sometimes frustrating, that it's not just about distracted driving as a primary offense. One other safety priority that we have in place, and then we do have one question in the Q&A that we'll get to. So please feel free to, if you do have additional questions, to throw those in the Q&A, and we'll start answering those. But one of the issues that we run into, and it comes back to the independent contractor status, is that there have been some jurisdictions, Ohio has not been one of them, but there's been some jurisdictions that have taken a look at like camera technology and using camera technology with independent contractors for training and retraining purposes, have viewed that in the control realm when it comes to independent contractor status. So one thing that we are looking for an opportunity to do is to take a look and find some language in there that says that if you're using safety technologies, that if you're mandating safety technology or safety functions or safety training or those kinds of items, that those items cannot be used as part of impacting the independent contractor status. And so, you know, we do have a very specific law in Ohio about independent contractor status, but we also want to make sure that someone isn't viewing these safety functions as part of the control issue when it comes to independent contractor status. So something I guess we're looking for the right opportunity, if it presents itself, for to work on to make sure that we're preserving that independent contractor status. Andrew, anything else that we missed in that process or in this before we get to the questions?
No, I'll go, if you can go back to that first slide. One thing I want to point out, and it was on the unemployment insurance. We've said this numerous times. Back in 2016, businesses, they were facing penalties because the state needed to pay off its debt because we had to borrow from the federal government to pay off our unemployment compensation, unemployment comp debt that we borrowed during the pandemic, or during the recession, I should say. Similar case with the pandemic. We had to borrow from the federal government, and businesses, Tom, I don't know when the penalties were going to kick in, but it was coming up that businesses were going to have to start paying penalties to repay that debt. The state of Ohio did something pretty smart, I think. They took the federal government's money to pay off the federal government. The state of Ohio was getting billions of dollars in COVID relief, and Ohio got a big portion of that and took $1.5 billion to pay off the federal unemployment comp debt. And that saved businesses, I think, over the course of the payoff, it would have been hundreds of millions of dollars. So while you couldn't use the federal money to lower taxes, you could use it to avoid penalties. And so we were able to save businesses quite a bit of money by doing that.
Yeah, and it also, I mean, it also shows the impact that we had. You know, the unemployment insurance debt was something that this association brought forth to the legislature that got enacted and put into place. And I think it shows just how astute or how much the administration and the legislature is paying attention to that impact now that they really didn't care about when, 5, 6, 7 years ago. That this is a high priority issue, and they basically, they took from the federal government from one funding source and used it to pay the federal government off in another funding source. So a very creative way to use the federal government's money. But yeah, definitely something that it was good to have, and something that made sure that that the state avoided, and it depended on the volume of the penalty, anywhere between $90 to $160 per employee per employer, or so per employee in the state of Ohio. So I think it's a very good use of the money. So one of the questions that was brought forth is, what about captives for workers' comp? And this is something that we have been working on and had a number of conversations with the agency about. As you know, Ohio is one of 4 monopolistic states that does not allow private insurance. So they do allow self-insurance. So we have talked to them about lowering that self-insurance realm and developing captives in as part of the state. So that, you could have the Ohio Trucking Association workers' comp captive. So we are still having those conversations. We recently had a changeover in the head of workers' comp, and then she came back. So we are going to continue having those conversations that would require a legislative change to be able to put that into place. So we are looking at that. One area that we did fill that hole with was a program that we have through Alloy Insurance, which is their own captive. It's a self-insurance kind of PEO that is specifics in workers' comp coverage that we have available to our members to be able to get that. And there's a lot of benefits to that as well. And to be able to put that into place for your business is something that we took a look at as a very beneficial option. But we are still working on, is there an association sponsored captive from the workers' comp realm that we can put into place. Well, Andrew, any parting thoughts that we have for the Team 88 crew? I do not see any more questions in the queue, but any other parting thoughts or things that you feel we should cover?
Yeah, just a few things. I'll kind of tell everyone where we are in the legislative process. Lawmakers just came back, at least here in the state of Ohio. I'm not going to talk about the feds. That's a whole separate mess. But Ohio's lawmakers just came back to session this month. They took a brief recess after passing the budget over the summer. And they're going to take a crack at passing some high-profile bills. One that you all will likely be hearing about is the vaccine mandate, or in this case, exemptions to the COVID vaccine mandate and requirements that businesses may or may not be imposing on their employees. Ohio is doing the exact opposite of what the feds are doing. You got the Biden administration forcing vaccine mandates. Ohio is saying businesses can't require vaccines, and it's been met with pushback not only from those in the healthcare community, but also the business community. No mandate on a business, whether it's for or against vaccines, is a good one. Let businesses make their own decisions. So there have been dozens and dozens of COVID-19 related legislative bills introduced. It's kind of difficult to track, but the House Republicans have come up with their own proposal. It's House Bill 435. It was supposed to be passed yesterday, but they couldn't get a consensus within their own caucus. So it was sent back to the Rules and Reference Committee. Expect some changes, but you will be hearing quite a bit about House Bill 435, whatever form it takes. What essentially it does, it allows exemptions from any mandates that or requirements that a business may impose when it pertains to the COVID vaccine. So just be on the lookout for that. We'll continue to track it, but it's we're kind of getting hit on both sides. That the federal government, they're pulling one direction, the state of Ohio is pulling the exact opposite direction, and how it all works out is still unknown.
Yeah, and for our members' sake, do they know we're watching these very closely? I've been very open in my opinion on this. Is one of my biggest concerns is there's another bill floating around out there that would actually make employers who require vaccines to be held, or potentially would be held civilly liable for any side effects that the vaccine may have on an employee. So if the employer requires or is required by law to mandate it, that they would be then civilly liable if something happens to one of those employees because of that. And it puts employers in a very bad position because, we're looking at a number of things, like you said, that the Biden administration is doing. If you're under a federal government contract, you have to do it. If you have over 100 employees, according to their latest rule, which I do not believe in any way, shape, or form will withstand legal challenges. But these are things that we're obviously watching very closely, especially as tight of a labor market as we are. That we don't want to put a company who has 100 employees at a disadvantage when it comes to finding drivers or finding employees than one who's sitting at 90 employees. So just a very arbitrary number. But there is a couple things that are hanging out there that we're watching extremely closely to make sure that employers, regardless of how they feel about the vaccine or not, that those are questions those are concerns that we're making sure that allows businesses to be free to operate their business however they choose. And that's definitely something that we've advocated for our entire existence and will continue to advocate for, especially in this realm as well. Well, Andrew, we got no more questions, and I think we did a pretty thorough job of explaining everything. Folks, if you do have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me, tom@ohiotrucking.org, to be able to get you some information about what legislative things are pending. And if there's other issues that you're encountering from the government that you really want our help on, or think that there should be a bill on, please feel free to reach out the same way to make sure that that your voice is definitely heard. So Andrew, thank you for being with us, and we will be back with you next quarter for another Team 88 update.
Thanks, Tom.
Thank you.